Ring-a-ling-a-ling, ring-a-ling, ring, ring, ring. Jacob? 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 Wait, the Jacob official, or is this the fake Jacob? It's the real Jacob?
I'm here.
I thought the real Jacob had a full beard. A full beard, no?
Yeah, the beard's God. The wife was like, "Nah, I want my mustache back."
Ah, yes. Dude, what is up with the reintroduction of the mustache in American culture? It's become so normalized where 10 years ago it would be very hard to get away with one without getting a lot of comments like, "Oh, why you got that on your face?" But now it's so normal, especially Major League Baseball players.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting to me.
I attribute it to Ted Lasso.
That's so good.
He's
Yes.
like Ted Lasso, and this is woeful, but I've just been introduced to Ted Lasso as my master's, program. Ted, I think, is kind of like the cinematic equivalent to, what's his name? Who's the guy? This is terrible. I'm blanking on names right now. Who's the guy that runs the TV show that wears sweaters? And it's a little kids TV show from the 70s.
Mr. Rogers?
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers?
Mr. Rogers, thank you. I think Ted Lasso is the current 21st century equivalent to Mr. Rogers for people.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So,
did you watch the Mr. Rogers movie starring Tom Hanks about 2 or 3 years ago?
I need to watch it. I've seen clips from it, and I have so many movies. Like, we're just catching up over here.
Yeah. And then around the same time that Tom Hanks rendition came out, there was also a documentary that came out about Mr. Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was a fascinating dude. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about Jacob Davis, and you're coming to us. I'm always glad when there's someone that comes to us that's not actually in my state at the time we're recording. So you're coming to us from the distant land of
South Carolina.
Yes. All right. You're at least across one state border from me. I have been trying for like 2 months to interview my next door neighbor, and it just hasn't worked out. He goes, not a good week for me. And I'm like, dang it, come on. I'm going to have Joe on one of these days. I can't wait.
Oh.
Well, this is cool. Jacob, we have only known each other a couple months through a mutual friend, Mr. Trey. And you're a musician and a songwriter, and what else makes you you? If you had 30 seconds to describe what makes you unique, how would you describe that?
I am internally a poet, and I describe, like, this is like a 2-word description, but I've described myself as a person that I think in a third way. So I'm in terms of options with, life choices for people. Most people will pick A or B, and I pick C. And if C doesn't exist, I will make C exist.
Now, is that to a fault sometimes? Like you force yourself to not pick A or B, and it's almost to a fault sometimes because it's so ingrained in you to go that direction, to go rogue from the typical?
100%.
Because I can relate a little bit.
100%. It's my fault. Yeah. and to a fault. Yeah. It's sometimes it works out, but other times, there is just A or B.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're married to the wonderful, what's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Ivy.
Ivy. All right. How long y'all been married?
We've been married a year and a week.
Wow. All right. still
Yeah.
newlyweds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything has been daisies and unicorns. Never an argument, never anything awkward.
Oh man. No, we're real people over here.
Exactly. I just like when people are honest, and say, yes, it's difficult, it's hard, but it's worth it.
Yes.
Just like anything in life that you have to work hard at it are the most worthwhile things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, good for you. And so Jacob and Ivy, and you're down in South Carolina. And how much do you actually play music out? I know you and Trey played the other night, but how often? Is it once or twice a week? Is it once or twice a month? How often do you get to do that?
Anywhere from once to 3 times a week. It depends on the year.
Mm-hmm.
I had a solid couple years where nothing was happening. 2020 destroyed musicianship for everyone.
A lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we made a joke at the show this past weekend, and we were talking about how 2020. What's that? That doesn't exist. We're gonna be in denial right now. We're talking about that year. But
I miss wearing masks. I really do. I miss it. So great. Not being able to see people's faces. Oh, geez.
I do genuinely.
Please never again.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Of the genuine part, I do miss that some people seem to be way more physically present during that year than they are now or were previously. So I know we're going to be talking about something else here in a minute, but I was part of a house church at that point in time, and I remember those people became very present. Like, we weren't really on our phones or doing. It was like we're sitting across from one another having lengthier conversations.
Yeah.
So I kind of miss some of that because I feel like the fast lane life of Western civilization has taken over once again, and people are just like back to business as usual, quote unquote. But anyway, just a little side note.
I did see a thought-provoking tweet the other day that just said, "What did we do before smartphones?" And it's becoming harder and harder to imagine. It really is. Like in line at the post office or sitting at a party. If you're at a party and the person goes to the bathroom or whatever, you don't often just sit there or force yourself into a conversation with somebody. Well, I wouldn't want to interrupt. I'll just go on my phone and scroll whatever, or I'll look up the weather or whatever it is, or the sports score, or look at Insta stories, whatever it is. It's so wild to think what life was like before these bad boys.
Right.
It's so interesting. But that would be a whole nother conversation. So
man.
tell me I want to know what Jacob was like in high school. That's what I want. So right now you're 26, 27. How old are you?
Oh, that was close. Yeah, I'm 28.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be 29 this year.
So high school, were you in Columbia for high school?
No, the first 2 years I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and I went to Creekside High School. And then I was at Black Forest Academy in Germany the last 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that the teenage years are the whole reason I bring it up. It's not like this is made for teenagers per se, but I bring it up because I think those are such formative years for any human. When you're a teenager, you're really working out who you'll be for the long term. So let's go to 10th grade. Like, who was Jacob? Like, were you a popular kid? Were you a quiet kid? Were you a smart kid? Were you an odd kid? Did you get picked on?
Yeah.
Were you a stud? I mean, what were you like?
That's hilarious. Man, gosh, I would have probably, if I had to use 2 words, I'd call myself a rebel evangelist at that time.
Okay.
But I was also incredibly introverted until
Okay.
halfway through my junior year. So I was this
Okay.
punk rock, pop punk scene kid, stuck 10 years in the past. I'm a missionary kid. So when we're
Uh-huh.
on the field, you're behind by a decade. So I'm like a 90s kid thrown through a time traveling machine into the middle of the 2000s.
Uh-huh.
And I was very open about my faith. I also hated popular kids,
Mm.
hated them. And I
Okay.
hated anybody who was fake in any way.
Okay.
So I had a big chip on my shoulder. Um, my personality type kind of formed in high school. I'm an ENFJ. I don't know if you care about Myers-Briggs, but
Mm.
I don't know. It's whatever. So it's
How about
just
Enneagram? Do you know your Enneagram number?
I am a 4.
Okay. I'm a
Yeah.
3, by the
Okay.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was an interesting period of time. I was just talking about that time with Ivy and thinking about that period. And that's what led to our moment that we're going to talk about, I think, here in a second.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Because I always like to kind of build up to the moment, at least a little bit. And so the moment that you want to dive into happened when you were around what age?
I was in between 10th and 11th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going back to high school, middle of
Mm-hmm.
high school.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't this the year you moved to Germany?
Yes. There's
So
multiple moments, but we were going to talk about boxing, so I was going to highlight
yeah,
that.
I know, but that's the time frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
the time frame that you were about to move to Germany. So you're talking about getting into boxing. Did you do that when you were still over here in the States or once you got to Germany?
Yeah, I had started. I used to love martial arts, and all of my friends grew up doing jujitsu. When I was in homeschool, like in elementary, we went to. There was like 2 things we did
Mm-hmm.
collectively with all these homeschool kids at this church. We went
Mm-hmm.
to the local jujitsu dojo. So you had 40 kids from the same community.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also did Cozy Grammar, which is this like ancient English literature video series.
Not Kelsey Grammer, but
No,
Cozy Grammer.
Cozy Grammar. Yes, Cozy Grammar.
So like his cousin, Cozy Grammer.
Mhm. Yeah,
Kelsey Grammer's cousin. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
It's a little creepy, like if I'm thinking back on it, because it was this like 65-year-old Canadian lady with like really weird mid 80s synth music, and they would like she would be like, "Welcome to Cozy Grammar today. We're going to be talking about herbs." And anyway, kind of a weird.
Did you say herbs?
I said verbs, but it sounded like
Today we're
verbs.
talking about rosemary and oregano.
It's fantastic. I
Herbs
love it.
is our. Oh my gosh. Okay, so moving away from Cozy Grammar, which is
Yes.
a story in and of itself, which I need to find on YouTube apparently now. Uh, so you get into boxing. How in the world did you just?
Mhm.
Because I never got into boxing. So what was different about your story than mine that had an on ramp to becoming a boxing enthusiast? And this
Yeah.
is watching boxing or actually doing boxing?
So I started in high school. I had and if you know more of my story, this makes sense. I had some anger management issues, and I did get bullied and picked on, and so I wanted to defend myself, and that led to
Mm-hmm.
me. Probably the reason that I'm short is that I was doing weightlifting at 12, which like you shouldn't be
Oh
doing
wow.
that at 12. Like, you'll be short.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
I was doing that sort of stuff, and I got gloves, and we didn't have like all the money in the world, so I would go jump on YouTube and I'd research different moves and forms, and
Mm-hmm.
but what ended up happening was there was the summer before we went to Germany, we were staying with some local friends here in town, and one of my dad's old friends from the '90s era, uh, he came and he was like, "Hey, I want to come see you guys and hang out." And they hadn't chatted in years. And this guy's name is Don Steele. Um, Don had been a professional boxer. He had had several fights. There was a movie that I think is going to come out at some point, but it's about him and his manager, and how they had this interesting relationship because they were the only people that didn't have a contract. They had a 50-50 deal on a handshake that they honored between one another. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So he's an interesting guy. He did boxing, and then he became a youth pastor years later. Um,
All right. As you do.
yeah, why
From
not?
boxing to... So were you already into boxing and then you meet this guy who's like a superstar boxer, and then did you immediately make that connection and say, "Hey, Mr. Steele, I'm actually into boxing"? Like, was it pretty quick, or did he find out? Did you find out? And of course, was there any interaction with you two where he said, "Hey, come with me in the backyard. Let me show you some moves"? I want to
Yeah,
know all that stuff.
yeah. No, all that happened. So uh, like he came, said hello, and my dad said, "Yeah, Jacob's been interested in fighting." He's like, "Okay, let me give you a lesson." So he gives me a lesson. He you know, checks
Like
all
right
my
then.
yeah, right then, yeah. Got my gloves out and he's checking my form, and you know, he's like, "Well, you need to protect mama's face. You kind of suck at that. So put your hands up, make
Mm-hmm.
sure you don't get clobbered." He's this
Uh-huh.
big, 6'7", 400-pound guy. Like
Good
he
grief.
is huge. Like, and his fist
Uh-huh.
is like the size of my head. So he's like this behemoth, and I'm like 5'3" or something,
Oh my
lightweight.
gosh.
And here's this heavyweight champion, in the living room, making sure my
Okay.
form is like set. So it was the like trippiest, weirdest thing. But he was super cool about it, and I it was spur of the moment. It got me hooked, and I kind of focused in, and I started getting heavy bags, and I eventually joined two different clubs in high
Oh
school, so
wow.
it was a fun time.
And so how adept did you get? Like, could you at some point, a year into it, year and a half into it, could you have really like manhandled one of your bullies had they come after you physically at that point?
Yeah,
You could have taught them a lesson.
yeah. Um, I could have. Yeah. It was. I had a moment, a kind of a low moment during that time, kind of leading up to before meeting Don. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I got in a fight with a guy on the bus, and I lost my temper and drop
Mm-hmm.
kicked him a couple of times. He's much bigger than me. Um, and
Wow.
yeah. I won't share all of that details here because we want to keep it PG here. We're trying to keep it, but
Somewhat PG.
yeah, somewhat PG. Anyway, uh, the short version of that is I ended up feeling guilty. God asked me to ask him for forgiveness, so I did. That
Mm-hmm.
kid was a popular drinking football player. He became a Christian years later and was my RA, and we hadn't chatted
Oh
in
wow.
6 years. So that's a whole nother trippy
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, but in definitely my senior year, I was in my best shape. I remember I took down. Um, there's this kid who came in, and I love this kid. Like, I don't have. He's a great kid. I can't remember his first name. His last name is Fercucci. Um, he came in and he never fought before, and he was feeling a little cocky just a little bit, and he
He came
started.
into the club.
Yeah, he came into the
Okay.
club, and
Yeah.
I was the second club was at our high school, and I was an assistant kind of coach at that point, and we did boxing and Muay Thai. So I was doing both of those.
Mm-hmm.
I hate Muay Thai because getting kicked hurts so much more than getting
Mm-hmm.
punched. It's bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided, well, I'm going to focus on the boxing and try to train people with, arms. And so he came in, he's like, talking crap, cussing, all that stuff. And I said, okay, well,
Uh-huh.
you ready for a little round? Let's go. Put the gloves on. And he starts, doing this number and his hands are flying. And I'm just like, and he ends up falling over, and he's a much bigger kid.
Yeah.
But even though I was smaller, I had a lot higher pain tolerance at that point.
Ah.
And
Huh.
there's different strategies in boxing, and I
Yeah.
decided to be, again, because of my personality type, I'm going to pick option C. I decided to be a strength fighter. So as a
Uh-huh.
strength fighter, you take all the hits and you wait till someone's tired out, and you make choice hits to try to get the person to fall over.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
when you watch, do you still like watch boxing, like current boxing matches? Like, are you fascinated by it? Like, do you keep up and watch them? And it's so interesting because you would probably have such a different perspective than someone like me watching and me going, get him, but having no idea what I'm talking about. But
Right.
do you still watch like boxing matches
I
to
I
this
occa-
day?
I occasionally do. I'll watch UFC and boxing, and little highlight reels will pop up on TikTok or Instagram, and I'll
Yeah,
blow around.
yeah, yeah.
I'm much more obsessed with songwriting at this point, but like
Right.
I got a gym membership, and there's a kind of like a boxing area at our gym, and
Mm-hmm.
there actually is a local club here, but they charge more than I want to pay to join the club.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Got you.
but yeah, I'm kind of excited. I'm gonna go hit the bag later, and you know, we'll see how much of it I still retained.
Yeah. So let's land the plane in the next 3-4 minutes, but I want to know, why was this so pivotal for you? And or what do you think your life would have been like had you not pursued boxing? And like, why this thing? Of all the things you could have chosen, why boxing? And yeah, like what difference has it made in your life, or what difference did it make early on, and now looking back, what difference has it made now? Did you learn a lot of discipline? Did you learn confidence? I want to know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it built confidence, discipline, and self control, which I needed. Being a artist
Mm-hmm.
type, being um, a very spontaneous artist type, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I needed to learn how to, okay, what happens when you have a long term goal that you have to be diligent with, that you have to
Mm-hmm.
put the daily work in?
Mm-hmm.
It helped with anger management. It ended up getting me into a place where I realized I had a major anger management problem, and I got counseling for it, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend that.
I love
Um,
counseling.
Counseling is so good for you. Everyone should get
Uh-huh.
a counselor. Go get a counselor.
It's like taking your car to the shop once a year and saying, "Hey, look, see if there's anything wrong with my car." It's the same thing,
Right. It's
except
so
probably more important.
much more important. So
Mm-hmm.
I recommend that. Um, yeah, at the time I was just like so angry, and I needed uh you know to see that I could do more than what I was doing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it also uh the the main reason that kept me going. This is kind of interesting tidbit. I know it's Eric Little in what's that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm blanking on the movie, but he
Me
talks
too.
about he talked about running, feeling God's pleasure at the time.
Chariots of Fire.
Chariots of Fire.
Chariots
yeah.
of Fire.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
That's what we're missing. And I felt God's presence fighting more than any other time, which is
Wow.
a weird one for people, more than being on a stage playing guitar and singing a song.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I don't know if I'd say the same thing now, but I certainly do. There's just, like, I remember I got into this fight. This was when I was in the German league, which the German league was way harder than the American high school league that I was in. Those guys, they train speed fighters. So in amateur, they're counting your hits. They're not counting how many takedowns you do. And so if you're a small person, the judges want to see how many uppercuts you get, how many, right hooks you got in, how much you covered yourself up, that sort of stuff. And also the rounds are 2 minutes in amateur and they're 5 minutes in professional.
Oh, wow.
So, but the German guys, they were focused on speed. And I remember I came in there and there was this guy named Wolfgang, who's this, he must have been like half South American, half German or something. But this guy was like 180 and jacked, and his speed was unbelievable. Like, like he could probably throw 5 punches in a second. I mean, it was just like,
gosh,
it's like so unbelievable.
Like a blur.
Yeah, and his form was perfect. It was perfect.
Wow.
There was not like a, and I remember they put me in there, and and I had been in with the guys for maybe like 4 or 5 weeks or something like that. And we're doing the first round. This is like practice rounds, but there's still a real fight. There's just control. So like the first round, you can only do left and right. The second round, you can do left, right, and uppercut, and the third round you can do the hook or whatever. He was offended that I was there and I was fighting him. So he starts, whatever, and I'm covering up, and I'm like, I keep trying to get in there, and every time I'd reach, he would.
You would take 2.
Yeah, take 2 or whatever, take 3.
Ugh.
And but I kept going, and I ended up uppercutting him, and he started bleeding. His nose went everywhere, and then he was really upset that. God, and he starts going.
You popped him.
I'm like, come on.
Wow.
But that was a fun fight. That's the hardest fight that I fought.
Yeah. So now at 28, looking back, this has made such a profound difference on who you are now, considering if you hadn't found this outlet, learning how to contain your emotions, to put guardrails on your emotions. And not just that, but having an outlet sometimes where you can let off some serious steam, which is biological. I mean, it's psychology that when you're worked up, sometimes there is no pressure valve release other than physically going into the backyard and hitting a 2x4 against a tree, or going for a power walk through the neighborhood or something. There is something physiological. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've read some about it, knowing that when you tell somebody, why don't you just calm down in the middle of a screaming match, it does nothing, because it's your brain cannot self-regulate sometimes until it has time to physically blow off steam.
Yeah.
And so if I feel like that's what that taught you. So good on you for getting in a gym that has a bag, and you're going to go beating on that bag on occasion.
Yeah. Thank you, man. So sorry if I monologued too long.
It's totally fine. This is about you. So I appreciate a monologue. Better than just staring at me. But Jacob, this has been cool, man. And I love doing this podcast, because I get these little glimpses into everyday human beings, like me and you, that have very interesting stories. Everybody's got stories. It's just sometimes having the permission to pull them out
Mm.
and really examine the way that they've affected us, you know.
Mhm.
But
Man,
man,
well, thanks for
I
having me. I don't ever talk about this kind of stuff, so it's cool to share it.
well, I consider it an honor, and obviously for the people that listen to this podcast, I'm sure they're going to really appreciate listening to you as well and getting a glimpse behind the curtain of Jacob Davis. But you're on your lunch break from work, and I know you got to go. Are you gonna even have time to eat your ham sandwich or whatever
No,
before you have to clock
I
back
got
in?
it right here, man. We're all good. I got my beef stew. We're set.
All right, well, I'll let you get to your beef stew. Jacob, hope to see you around soon. Next time you're up this way, hit me up. Dude, I appreciate you being on. Really, really, really
Man,
awesome, man.
awesome. Thanks, brother. Have a great one.
Yep, you too. Later.